Today we have the privilege of hearing from the leaders who represent legacy businesses that have stood the test of time. We have science shaping business ideas, decisions, and strategies. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Keshav Suri, Executive Director, the LaLiT Suri Hospitality Group. He has been instrumental in redefining the hospitality industry and championing LGBTQ rights and workplace inclusion. Mr. Devansh Jain, Executive Director, Inox GFL Group, which has a legacy of over 90 years. Ms. Rishma Kaur, Chairperson, Berger Paints India. She's at the helm of affairs of the company, and her vision has helped in strengthening the global foothold. So with this, Keshav, I'd like to begin with you.
Okay.
So yes, with the kind of work you are doing, I would love to know the impact, the legacy you have had, you still have. So what's the impact of that on the kind of work you do?
Wow. Thank you so much for having me here. And, I'm very grateful to be here, but I'm also very grateful to share this stage with both of them. The impact of the legacy work that you're talking about, let me go with a little bit of what my legacy is. I come from a deep-rooted feminist background. I come from very strong women that have led me to be the man that I am today. And so the legacy that I carry is of very, very strong women. Then the legacy that I carry of a business that is deep rooted in the value of Swadesi movement. It's Bharat Hotels, it's deep rooted in the values of being Indian. And it's also deep rooted in the values of respect for individuals. At some point, we say Atiti Devo Bhava, which means we recognize the divine in you, the you, anything, the you that is male, female, trans, the divine in you that could also be on the neurodivergent spectrum, that could also be on the queer spectrum, that could be differently abled, that could be whatever gender identity you may be carrying. I'm very proud to be a part of this legacy. The work that I do in particular for the LGBTQI plus community is important, yes, especially when you come from a stereotypically very conservative society. However, the background that I belong to has made me see this from a very different lens, from a very intersectional lens. And I'm very proud of the work that we do. And I want to quickly shout out, because you asked about my legacy,
Yes.
But my legacy is in this room is my team. My team from the LaLiT that is there, and from the Keshav Suri Foundation, because my team represents what we stand for as a company. My team has openly gay men, lesbian women, trans men, trans women, neurodivergent people. It's a world that we believe in, the world that we built, and that we hope the rest of the world also takes on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. For Devansh and Rishma, I have a common question. So, growing up, what are your early memories of the family business? And the second part of it is, were you always interested in taking the legacy ahead?
So, it's a privilege to be here. Thank you. So, early memories were always about dad working all the time, and numbers being discussed, new ventures being planned. So as they say, sometimes you're born in a business family. In my family, all our conversations continue to be around work. As a kid, I spent a lot of time in Gujarat. That's where dad was building the first factory in our group. So I used to go to the factory all the time. So my earliest memories were always understanding how chemical complexes operate, building new ventures, numbers, ambition, drive, resilience. These are the words which have played around with me since I've been around. And I think when my time came, I was very clear. It was always about work for me. So, in fact, I went to Carnegie Mellon. I did a dual degree in 3 years, and I wanted to come back and work. Mom wanted me to work outside. I was going to work with one of these big 5 I banks, but I just thought it's a waste of time. Dad was open, so I pushed my way through it, and I came back. And I'm so glad I came back and I started building the entire renewable arm for the group. Uh, as I said, I always wanted to be part of business. I always wanted to create something, but not necessarily get into what Dad had built, expand on that, and create far more value and newer things and leave my own impact, if I may say so.
Was there this pressure of proving yourself?
Uh, there's, when you step into someone like Dad's shoes, obviously there's tremendous pressure. You just can't go wrong. Having said that, I was very clear. I always wanted to build something. And it's funny, I fought for about 2 years after I came back to get an initial corpus to build out a business. And I had to fight because they just said there's so many businesses, why do you need to go out and do anything? And I said, no, there are people who are already operating it. So I got this princely sum of 10 crores in 2010 after fighting with Dad for about 2 years to then eventually build out Inox Wind, which ended up becoming the largest company in our group at that point in time. But obviously, there was no question of failing. The pressures, the challenges, navigating through all of that, and yet succeeding, I think it depends what kind of pressure you want to take.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me on this panel, and it's an honor to share the stage with both of you. Early memories, I think I just grew up in a household that was always talking about paint. My father had moved to Delhi in 71 after they got married, my parents, from Amritsar. The family business actually began in 1898. So I'm actually fifth generation now in this long line of just doing paints. Um, so when I was born, my father was in Delhi and he was actually setting up the whole system and marketing and production. Everything was happening in Delhi. Eventually, his two brothers from Amritsar also moved. So we've actually grown up going to paint factories, seeing how paint is made, what all goes into the paint. And I think the first automation part, other than the machinery, was how they used a camel to grind the paints and mix the paints. And this camel had a blindfold over his eyes, and he would go round and round. And they always made it so fun, the different kind of experiments that would go on with chemistry and making things like silly putty, which actually is like a plasticine which bounces. So, and then they would have games with all the workers in the factory and the office, which we all participated with also. So that's my memory of growing up. Is just, I think we've got paint in our bodies, not blood.
So sorry to interrupt. Do you like the smell of paint?
I love the smell of paint. I do. Absolutely. Yeah. And yes, so I was always interested in that. And when I went to study abroad, I was sort of, more interested in marketing and new product development, innovation, how things can be done quicker, more efficiently. A lot of projects were there. It was very on the learning kind of a course. So when I came back, there were a lot of new ideas, a lot of ways, new ways of doing things, which I was very excited to try out, and I was given that opportunity, and that's how it's been. So I've enjoyed my journey so far very much.
Just adding a question to it. You also have professional heads and top leadership roles in the company. So how do you ensure there is always a balance between the interest of the promoting family and also the professional heads?
So my father and my uncle, who actually started this, when they acquired Berger Paints, it was already a professionally run company. They didn't want to disturb it, and so they gave all the finances that were needed. Of course, there's a board. The board has monitoring whatever the management is doing. Strategies are laid out by the board and the management together. It's a very good partnership. So we work. We know where we need the expertise, but it's a partnership that has really been working well. And yeah, so we're quite happy with it.
Got it. So moving to you. Yes. So you played an instrumental role in revoking Article 377.
Yes.
If you can, just elaborate on the journey and how that happened, and also your fondest memory of it,
Of it?
of revoking.
Of revoking. Okay, and it's a very long journey, and I feel that I will just completely take over the panel. So I'm so sorry for that. I will be very quick. The British gave us many gifts. One of those gifts was what they called the Buggery Law, which was criminalizing homosexuality, as they didn't understand the plurality of India, and they didn't quite understand also in India the trans community, queer people. We existed, and we existed for many, many, many years. So for 200 years, they completely wanted to dismantle that and bring in their Victorian moralities, and therefore they brought in this Section 377, which criminalized homosexuality. It was first decriminalized by the High Court in Delhi in 2009. And then it was appealed and it was overturned in 2013 by the Supreme Court, of which the judge said, who are these gay people? Who are these lesbian people? It is too minuscule a minority for us to care about. And then he looked at the lawyers and made a joke about it. That is when a lot of us gays and lesbians, in particular in positions of privilege, and I have to check my privilege, decided that it is time that we showed the Supreme Court and the country who we are. And therefore, there was a batch of 5 petitioners, which was Navdeep Singh Johar, Ritu Dalmia, Aman Nath, Aisha Kapoor. We all got together. I have to say again proudly, from the hospitality industry, Chef Dalmia, Aman Nath of Neemrana, and me. And then there were also lawyers like Saurabh Kirpal, Menaka Guruswamy, and Arundhati Kachu, who also came out in their journey as gay and lesbian and decided to take on a batch of actual queer, gay, and lesbian people. So I was a part of that petition that led to our review constitutional bench in 2018 that led to the final decriminalization of it was a judgment of 5 judges. And I'm sure you can all read up about it, that led to the decriminalization of homosexuality in India. So what was that feeling? That feeling was, one was that I wanted to put my money where my mouth is. If this is a community I want to serve, I wanted to make sure that I was not a hypocrite. But I think the biggest thing was freedom. We got the freedom to breathe in the decriminalization. There's still a long way to go for further rights. And I do want to educate the audience on this fact. I've talked about gay and lesbian. Transgender has been a very different fight in the country. Transgender freedom and recognition of the transgender community happened in the Nalsa judgment in 2014. And then the Recognition of the Transgender Persons Act in 2021, which goes to show India, Bharat, is one of the only and the most trans progressive countries in the world. And I think countries like United States and the rest of the world need to learn from us. But we still have a long way to go to get marriage equality and further equality when it comes to anti-discriminatory law and policies, but we're on it.
Can you also talk about the Pride Fund that you have launched?
Very kind of you. Should we go to somebody else first?
I will.
Okay, so the Pride Fund. Sorry, I feel like I'm completely making this a queer agenda moment. If there is more, I mean, sorry. Okay, so the Pride Fund is our. I don't know how many people know Dasra, but Dasra is it is a platform, a grant-making platform that comes together, that works with grassroots NGO organizations. They started something called the Giving Pie, and they also started something called Rebuild India. For the first time, they came together with Radhika Piramal, Godrej, and us, which is the Keshav Suri Foundation. What we launched as India's first LGBTQI plus philanthropic fund. What we wanted to do was We wanted to map out the NGOs that are working for LGBTQ inclusion. And it was a big thing because we needed the country and the people and the courts to know that the LGBTQ movement is a grassroots movement. It's not a urban elite or a privileged movement, as some may think it is. There are over 80 NGOs across the country that work in the north, south, east, west, in places like Manipur, in places like Baroda, Vikalp, in places like Chhattisgarh, in places like Bihar. And what we did was we wanted to spotlight those organizations, especially for the hard work that they did. Out of the funds that we were managing to raise between Keshasuri Foundation, Godrej, and as well as Dasra and Radhika, a couple of crores we pledged for 3 years so that we could get grant making for these organizations to scale them up. So we managed to fund over 12 organizations. The plan and the goal is to get all 81 covered in this. We're also working on capacity building for each of them so that this becomes the largest fund that Dasra holds. And honestly, it's open to anybody. You can donate your time and energy on this. It's called the LGBTQI plus Pride Fund, yeah.
Thank you. So, Devansh, I want a little backstory on what happened.
Sorry.
I said I'm sorry.
No, okay. So, at the time when you listed the company at such a young age, so a little backstory on that. How did you? I know you just, you just touched through it when we were starting. So, how did you convince your dad and your entire journey of listing it? And when you got to know that you were the youngest entrepreneur to list a company at that point in time with that size, so how was it? How did you manage to make all that happen?
Well, one of my fondest memories. Of course, now we're building much more, but so going back, I came back, as I said, from Carnegie Mellon. I spent about 2 years with the senior team across our group companies, shadowing them, following dad. I'm also a strong believer. It's not always being on the shop floor. Many people say we rose from the shop floor. I didn't do that, frankly speaking. I was following all the senior leadership across the board in terms of decision making, in terms of vision, in terms of planning, in terms of the nuances of financial modeling, execution, sales. And I think at that point in time, what was happening was one of our companies, Gujarat Fluoro, had large cash flows. And we were looking at alternative avenues to deploy that capital. We had something called tax breaks back in the day, accelerated depreciation. So just before I came back from college, Dad had started setting up renewable energy. And that time it was controlled by companies like Windworld, Enercon, Suzlon, Region. It's funny we've acquired two of them since then. But whatever they promised vis-a-vis what we were getting, there was a huge alpha, right? So if they promised us, say, 18% IRR, we were getting about 10%. Effectively, because they controlled all the data, they controlled everything, the sites. So garbage in meant garbage out, right? So a third-party assessment didn't help us. So at that point in time, we decided that, and I came back as well, and we started thinking, if we're going to deploy large capital in renewables, how are we going to do this? And what came out in conjunction after discussing with McKinsey was we needed to control connectivity sites across India. So for about a year, I started building a pan-India LAN team, connectivity team. And over a period of time, I built about 5 or 6 gigawatts, which at that point in time was unheard of. It was the largest. Even today, we have the third largest project pipeline in the country. But after we did that and we went to the OEMs to buy material, they jacked up the price. They said, you do all this, what I would call, low-end work. But zara profit hum turbine mein le jayenge. So then, after all the work, we were wondering what to do. And that's when, then the end goal was to control the turbine. So I spent about a year and a half in China. I was looking at supply chains across the board. And that's when we entered the wind turbine side. Of course, after looking at the supply chain in China, it took a lot of time with Dad. Because, these are large capexes, right? We're looking at investing about 6,000 or 7,000 crores. This is way back in 2010. Today, it's a small number. So, after almost a year and a half of convincing, getting approvals, I got that princely sum of 10 crores. And I think since then, there's been no looking back. Of course, the initial days were very challenging. We're obviously running it as a startup. I mean, today we have a huge startup culture, a lot of financing funding available. Let's not forget, back in 2010, we didn't have this startup world and burn, and become the largest and then raise capital. So I still remember the stationery and the original logo of Inox, which we've now changed, was designed in the office. We used to use Reynolds pens. I've said this publicly in a couple of occasions. We had Uniball pens across our office. They cost $50. And Reynolds used to cost 4 rupees at that point in time. So there was everywhere ensuring that we are very tight on cost supply chain, because that's the only capital we had. So we started building our first plant, ramped it up, went into blades. We also had a larger vision that we'll make the blade, tower, the nacelle, all three things together. So obviously I was taking on much more than I could do. But we did all of that. We succeeded. And then, there was a shock in 2012. This so-called accelerated depreciation went out. So the reason why we built this business was to set up more capacity to get a tax break. And then the premise of that business went away. So, 2 years into building it and sweating for all these years, then we started looking at selling in the market because we had a great product. We were investing our own capital. And I think since 12 to 15, the business has zoomed. We had one of the most advanced turbines. It was one of the best products, probably the best product. And we went from zero to becoming the third largest wind turbine company in those 3 years, 12 to 15. Mind you, that was a time where we had almost 36 players in the sector. We had the Shrirams, we had the Ambanis, we had X, Y, Z. And then in 2015, we went and IPO'd. It was the most successful IPO in about 3 years. It was 1,000 crore IPO, which was very large at that point in time. Today, 10,000 is large, right? Which I'm working on, by the way. I hope it happens soon. But so I think then that really put us on a massive growth path. We became the second largest. Today, I think between us and another competitor, we control almost 65% of the Indian market. So it's been a hell of a journey. Yeah.
Great to know. Moving to Rishma ji. So you said that you're the fifth generation in the business. So how is your leadership style different from the previous generations that you have grown up with?
So I would say mine was more, I came back from college and I straight away started working. And I've been, working with various departments, various factories. But like I said, my passion was always new product development, making life easier for everybody. So finally, after a few years, when I realized that, painting sells paint. It's okay, you have your dealers, you have a paint in a box, but eventually it has to be opened and it has to be put on something. Luckily, we were very strong in protective coatings. Berger was always number one, as a market shareholder for protective coatings. So for that, you need specialized applicators, because if you're going to be painting bridges and oil and gas, sort of projects, you need very specific products and very specific ways of applying it. Traditionally, home painting was that you buy the paint and then the contractor would come and then the homeowners would talk to the contractor and tie up with him. But paint companies had nothing to do with the painting part of it. And that's how it went on forever. But when I came, I had to convince the management, had to convince my parents and my uncle and my father that we should get into painting. And they of course said, no, that's too risky. And I said, why don't you try it out? This is the model, this is the way it will work. You can take your money in advance, some of it, and this is how it's going to work, so that it's a tripart agreement. So you have, at least we are taking ownership to see that, okay, this painting project will be done under our supervision and the way that we've taught the painters. So that worked. Of course, it's been modified over time. We've now opened many institutes to train painters to paint properly and various kinds of systems. And again, automation. So making life easier by having mechanized sanding machines which have inbuilt vacuums, better spray machines for quicker application. So it worked, and then other companies followed the same thing. We call it express painting. It's faster, cleaner, better. But it can still be made better with mechanization, with maybe robotics coming in the future. The idea is to make it so easy for the customer that it's hassle free, quick, and that's where we are always working towards. The other thing was, okay, you had paints, but now paints need to be smarter. They need to perform better. They maybe need to do multiple things. Paint is just not a pretty face. It has many things behind it. It's killing, fungus, bacteria. It's also absorbing all your noxes, oxes, and all the bad pollution that's there. Some of it is self-healing. Some of it is self-cleaning. And there's still lots to do. There's new ingredients, new raw materials. So that carries on. Your network has to expand, your products have to be better, they have to be competitive, and yet you need to have the whole system driven by process rather than people. So it doesn't matter who come, who goes, at least the legacy should carry on. That's the whole thing. So, but that's been my constant.
So if you have to define your leadership style in two statements, what would that be?
It would be teamwork, because nothing happens without a team. A talent can win you maybe a game, but it's the team work that helps you build and win championships. And that's what I believe.
So we move to the last leg of the conversation. This is common for all three of you. Rishma, I would like you to begin. So your advice to next generation entrepreneurs and legacy businesses who are about to begin.
So I would say, please treat legacy as your roots. It's your foundation. Innovation is your wings. It will give you, sustainability. At the end of the day, you have to take innovation and legacy forward in a very well balanced way. And of course, build a good team, have good values, and follow what has always worked, and make it, sort of marry it into the future. Everything has to be sustainable. But as long as it's easy and people accept it, you take the team along.
Thank you.
To be honest, I think a lot of the next generation guys, you and girls, it's become a lot about family offices and about speed, quickly. How do we double our money? How do we get from here to there? And I think as much as it is about growth, ambition, it's about resilience. People forget the word resilience. And there is no long-term success without resilience. So I think people need to have patience and resilience if they really want to succeed. Family offices and doubling your money is not going to be here forever. If that was the best way, then all of us would only be running family offices and not being building companies, right? Number one. And I think the second thing is, along the way, a lot of people stop taking risks. And I think what is important is you can't get cushy and comfortable. The day you get cushy and comfortable, there's going to be someone out there who's going to be kicking your ass. So I think you got to take risks, calibrated risks. जितनी आपकी औकात है आप उतने करिए, पर risk तो लेना पड़ेगा. You're not going to be able to build anything without doing that. So I think these are two things. Patience, resilience are integral to success. And take risks.
The same question. Okay, so I think to have courage in your conviction, to believe in yourself because somebody will believe in you. But I think the most important thing is to continue dialogue and collaborate. Build a ecosystem where people can talk, can absorb, can get feedback, can listen. I do feel sometimes the younger generation is very quick to cancel, to cut off, and to cut dialogue. And the minute we cut dialogue, we are blocked. I think it's very important to be open. Because the only way when you're open is when you allow yourself to be able to be free to ideate and work with the people that have been there before you. Of course, every idea is brilliant, but but remember, somebody has already done it before, maybe in a different way. Work with them, give them that respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.